Hello, I'm James Button, and I'm a filmmaker who makes films. My website says about me, I'm a Welsh writer-director from Wales, double BAFTA Cymru nominated for 57 awards for his 23 short films. But most excitingly, I've made films about goats. You big ugly goat! It's led to five free trips to America to go meet goat people. Goats.
Wales, California, because of a goat.
Dog poo.
And where do you think you're going?
Angry houses. Whoa, no, no! Devil waiters. People who can't help but change direction. A man who turned into a tortoise. Dinosaurs.
Did you say aliens?
Aliens.
I fancied a chat.
Space-time continuums.
We've only got a broken the space-time continuum!
Okay, that'll probably do it.
Yeah.
I've made quite a few 48-hour films now, which is why Mr. Tom Betts has asked me to talk to you guys about some 48-hour films and how to make them. So one of the film competitions that we've entered previously is the Sci-Fi London 48-Hour Challenge, which is a lot of fun. So you have exactly 48 hours. You're giving a title of a film, a prop, and a line of dialogue, and then you've got to incorporate all those three into a film, and you've got to get that completely finished and screenable by the end of those 48 hours. So the first 48-hour sci-fi film we made was Flying Visit back in 2017. So we're given the title, Flying Visit. We're given one line of dialogue.
Bug it off.
And we're given a prop, which was... And with those three elements, we came up with a short film concept, which is with an angry Welshman, Deru, was shouting at a UFO, which kept visiting his house, asking for lasagna. The following year, we had Deru come back from Melting Point, where he gets very angry at his house this time, because AI... Stupidest films. It's the house! That's the bugger problem! This ended up getting the top 3 that year, which is very exciting because it was a very silly film. Most recently, last year, we made Ro Butler. And the plot for Ro Butler was overworked council worker gets a butler, which is an identical version of himself, to help him, but only ends up making things a lot worse. Low battery! And ends up taking his eyes out. So what is really cool about 48-hour film challenges is obviously you get a film after 48 hours. There you go. And then you get to screen that at the challenge. There's prizes, you can do well in that. But also after the challenge, there's a life outside that because you can repackage it, you can get sent to film festivals, and suddenly you're doing a bit of a tour. You're screening it in cinemas, getting people to see it, and from what I've learned is the more films you make, the more opportunities you get, and which ends up leading to making more films, which is great because that's what we like to do, make films. So when it comes to like low budget filmmaking, especially when you're first starting out, 48-hour films are great. And it's the important thing is to get everything planned and structured in those 2 days. So basically have very few locations, very few cast and crew, and it all be managed. But it's a really good practice. Or if you've made loads of films, it's also good practice to kind of like remind yourself of how it all works and kind of like back down to basics. You don't have 20 people on set and £20,000. You just got no money, 2 days, and that's your slot. That's what you've got to fill. Things to do beforehand, because you can't really think of you can't cheat, basically. Don't cheat. But you can't really think of the script and all those things beforehand because you know what title you're going to get, you don't know what prop you're going to get, or whatever it is that the rules of the challenge. But what you can do is get the right people involved, and that is usually like a small tight-knit crew. Usually it can be flexible in terms of what roles everyone does, or if they would do multiple roles, depending on how big and small your crew is. Usually it's handy if everyone has kind of like knows what they're going to be doing, what their responsibilities are going to be. And the wiggle room in that, because that's what happens in 48 hours is, you don't know what to expect. You don't know if it's going to be very VFX heavy or if it's lots of dialogue, lots of drama. In terms of who you collaborate with, this is a super important one. So you can spend years working with lots of different crews, lots of different people, and you can end up essentially vetting them, culling them until you found your dream team. But a lot of the people I've worked with for the last 10 years since graduating, and the people I worked with then, and the ones I really got on with are the ones who are better than me in lots of things. I was like, let's stick around with them, and we have stuck together since.
I nearly impaled you.
If you watch a lot of short films, you can find people who made the short films that you love, get in touch with them, meet up with them, and collaborate with them. 48-hour films are a great way of trialing out new people to work with as well, because you'll know after those 48 hours who you gel with, who you don't gel with, and who you bounce off best. So I think 48-hour films are a good way of getting a group of people together, maybe if you haven't worked on a big project together before, and because you know after 48 hours it's over, you never have to see these people again if you read it, if you really don't want to, and they're horrible. Don't work with horrible people is a big old tip. Locations, that's another big one, because I'd say keeping it minimal locations is key, and making the most of what you've got as well, because spending half the time in the car driving around to multiple locations, you can spend that time set dressing or lighting and designing the locations you do have. You want to see what you've got and focus on that little bubble and have that kind of as much control as you can have, really, because you can't control things like weather, so obviously that makes indoors a lot more appealing for this kind of thing. So with Melting Point, we had a flat, so we were like, okay, how can we make this house interesting? It doesn't look very sci-fi. Let's give it a voice. Let's get creative with the lighting. The house! That's the bugger problem! We knew someone who lived in a chocolate factory, so we were like, perfect. We had an entire chocolate factory, but in the end, we were like, actually, if there's aliens visiting Dero Dero, most of this will be outside anyway. So we had all this great location, but we didn't make the most of it because we didn't realize we didn't need it, because the story didn't involve that. So sometimes it's trying to get the balance right with using what you've got, but also not killing yourself over a really, really cool location, which ultimately a location is a backdrop, and it can look great, but really you've got to think about your story. I don't want any more of your eggs! And your characters, and what's actually going to be fun and entertaining to watch. So I think it's working out what you've got and working out the best way to utilize that, rather than killing yourselves over trying to find, a submarine. You don't need a submarine. So in terms of pre-production and what you can plan in advance, once you've got your crew, you've got your cast, and you've got your location, get some sleep beforehand, and lots of snacks. Snacks are great. But I think the scripting is where a lot of people struggle, because once you first get your title or whatever your challenge gives you, so many people either spend too long in this part arguing amongst themselves, because obviously you have a lot of cooks and a lot of broth and a lot of ideas floating around. So sometimes it can be good to kind of have a brainstorm, and then your nominated individual writer who's got this kind of the skills to kind of put it into script form, let them go off to a little bedroom, give them a milkshake, keep them watered, and then let them kind of turn those ideas into a single script, then come out, get them to perform it for you, or get the actors to do a script read, and then sign off on that, and then move forward to filming. But I wouldn't start filming until you've got a script, or at least you know what your 3 acts are, or how it's going to end. Like things like dialogue don't need to be nailed as such. If you've got the cast, you can improvise around the dialogue, and you can kind of like workshop around that. But if you have your structure blocked out and your script, then you have your menu, which you can work out. You can have dessert first if you really want to. I don't know why I've gone on this analogy. So if you're given a line of dialogue, this is obviously can be quite restrictive, especially sometimes the lines can be quite cringe or quite difficult to just like slot in anywhere, and obviously that's part of the challenge. So I'd say like use your line to give yourself so rather than creating a context and shoving the line in, maybe use the line to create a context. Like for example, for Roe Butler, the line was,
"So very pleased with your performance, really good."
When do you ever say, when you talk about someone's performance, and we were like, oh, so it's probably someone or something working for someone else, and we kind of worked backwards from the line, and we were like, oh, okay, maybe someone's serving, so Butler, and you're talking about performance in a very kind of like clinical kind of AI kind of way. And with Flying Visit, the line was,
Shouldn't you, turn around 3 times, throw some salt off your left shoulder or something?
Which is a very, very silly line. So we were like, okay, well, the film's got to be pretty silly, I think, where the character's just rambling to himself. The whole film ended up being a lot of nonsense phrases, so this kind of nonsense phrase fit in with a bunch of other nonsense phrases, so therefore it doesn't feel out of place.
That's what my mother used to say. Superstitious woman she was. Back before she shot herself. Just days before she had me.
And then with Melting Point, the line was, I can't even remember. That's how well we bury that one. So the film is so random. Obviously, comedy does help, because like and especially if it's random and fast paced, then those lines can blend in. But I genuinely cannot remember what the line was. So, but I'd say get creative. That's the job. Props, if that's part of the rules, where you have to feature a certain prop, like for Melting Point, we had me attack the wall with a screwdriver. For Flying Visit, we had me cook a lasagna, and then for Roe Butler, it was pull a circuit board out of something. So that was my bum. It can be quite a tricky one, because you might not always have the prop. Usually domestic things that you can get your hands on. But what I would suggest is having someone like a dedicated friend or neighbour, or I had my brother, who's not actually my brother, do it. When you get the brief through, whatever the props are, because okay, I'm getting too excited, to have someone dedicated to chopping, essentially, and ideally with a car or a fast bike or something, and they can kind of pop out and get that prop that you need, a shot proper, but also anything else you may need. And if you're scripting whilst they're shopping, that's also quite handy, because I remember last time, oh, and we actually need some eggs for the alien embryo eggs. Only got one, don't worry, Paul can VFX that. One thing people sometimes do forget, which is very important, is to shot list that then and break down that script and work out exactly how many scenes there are, what is needed in each scene, whether that's which characters you need, which props, which location, because then you can kind of do a shooting schedule and tailor that then, so you can be like, okay, all the stuff in the kitchen, because rather than shooting a bit in the kitchen and a bit in the living room, let's shoot all the kitchen stuff in one go, even if it's not linear to the script, because then you have to move lights back and forth and all that kind of stuff. So for Roe Butler, for example, we had a stupid amount of scenes, so therefore after the script we were like, where do we even start? So we worked out where to start by doing a shooting schedule, and this table then made sense to us, going, okay, so we've got day and night, we need to break up obviously between day and night scenes, and then we had kitchen and living room and garden, so we shot them all by location and by time of day, and that's the only reason we've got it done in time. Making sure you get it all done in time, obviously, is the big thing with the 48-hour film challenge. You've got to get it done. So I'd suggest making sure that you schedule it, and I think in every step of it, really, maybe have like a producer, someone dedicated, like a first AD, dedicated to keeping track of timings, and once you've got the script, to break it down into locations, into times of day, all these kind of things, and work out what's going to be the most efficient way of doing it, because that is the only way you're going to get it done, really. Then you shoot the thing. You shoot the script like that. That's filmmaking, and you have fun. Don't forget, have fun, because that's why we do it. And after you've had fun and shot the thing, you get to the edit, and then you've got to cut it together, color grade it, do the sound mix, do the score, VFX. So there's a lot. So don't neglect post. So in terms of workflow, if you've got to get the edit done in that 48 hours, we've gone about it a few different ways. So here's one time when it went, well. For Melting Point, once we had the script, we started shooting, and I was a bit ambitious with the script. I think there was 24 scenes to shoot in not a lot of time, but what we did have is an editor who we could start editing whilst we were shooting. So that kind of parallel, so as we were shooting, they were editing. That worked out really nicely. Thanks, Franco, because by the time we finished the scene, we could go in and watch the previous scene we shot. And the good thing about doing this is, on Melting Point, for the most emotional scene where my character Deru is crying at a wall, he's apologising to the house for being such a bad homeowner. And when he's crying at the wall, we realised, whilst we were wrapping the final scene, that the sound wasn't great. There was a loose connection, whatever it was, these things happen, and we were like, that's useless! So we needed to reshoot the key emotional scene of him being crying at a wall. So we did, but it would have been too late to have started doing reshoots on a 48-hour film challenge if we didn't have an editor,
Beautiful bastard,
working all the way through the shoot. So that's the way to do it, ideally. Handcuffed to a desk where they're kind of editing, and they can't leave. Feed them, and that's all good. Then the other way of doing it is leaving it all until the last minute. And for the last film, Roe Butler, last year, it was just me and Paul, just two of us with no cast or crew. We're like, should we give it a go anyway? And we did. And our composer popped round because he was just like, I don't want to be up all night doing music this time, because I know what happened with Melting Point. And he came along with some coffees to check out what we were doing. He ended up bending over and pulling out fishing wires and doing lots of practical effects for us, because it was his first experience in a film set, and he did every role in the end of it, because we needed more people, more than two people, I'd recommend. But with that one, because there was 36 scenes for Roe Butler, which was a very silly thing to do, and we didn't have anyone else to edit for us, so it was 36 hours in when we wrapped, and then we had, I think it was 1 AM before the deadline. We had a very limited amount of time and no sleep at all in order to do that edit, the score, the colour grade, and all the VFX. So we kind of divided roles up then and just kind of worked through it. But that was a mad race until the final deadline, which obviously we had a film at the end of it, but we also didn't have any sweet dreams to dream because we didn't sleep. So one of the things that can make your film unique and special and feel a bit more kind of like tailored and completed, because that's a lot of the problem you have in the 48 hours, is actually making it feel like it's finished, is an original score, because that can be tailored for your cut, rather than kind of like cutting up some royalty-free music or whatever it may be. So if you're lucky enough to know a composer or someone who wants to be a composer, this is a good way of trialing it out. VFX is obviously a big one, and it obviously takes a lot of skill and a lot of time. So obviously not recommending doing massive visual effects in your 40-hour films. I'd say for render times and well, just everything that comes with VFX is to keep it bare minimal, keep it simple. Basically have someone who knows what they're doing, I suppose, which is obviously a blessing that I've got Paul. He's filming this. Get them working on it as soon as they can, so they're not just like, okay, and now I'd like an alien spaceship, please. So in terms of how ambitious to be, I'd say to go nuts, but obviously within reason, because time is not your friend in a 40-hour film challenge. Basically, I think I would try focus on maybe things like the style, things you do have control over, and maybe the substance. Maybe not think too big, but think how we can make this individual thing that we're focusing on bigger. So if we're shooting it in a living room, how can we make this living room really interesting? How can we make the editing interesting? How can we make this, the cinematography interesting? Like, that's what you've got on your side. If you're a filmmaker, you can use style, you can use and you can use genre to your advantage, and you can use expectations as well, so you can subvert them. You again. Anything that's a little bit different, a little bit cool, that'll get your film to stand out without having to have an army worthy of Mordor. Maybe that time could be put into thinking of a twist, or thinking of like how your character can have an arc as the film goes on. My tip is be ambitious in the right ways. Think about story, character, editing, the actual filmmaking techniques that you can use, and then tell something which is mad, which is sad, which is funny, or whatever it may be, but within reason. I think one of the things I could say is just to keep making them as well, because even just now I was thinking, like, it was all a blur. I can't remember. I can't give any advice. I can't remember how we got through it. But I guess that's because of it comes from experience, and the more you do, the easier it gets, and the same people that you work with, you end up developing a kind of shorthand. Because no matter how well the first one goes, and the second one goes, and the third and the fourth one, isn't like you will learn things all the way through, mainly from mistakes. Problem solving. Oh, I have encountered this problem multiple times before. I know what this is like. Here's what we do. I think it comes from working with the right people, having your workflow down, and ultimately just making lots of films. And the more films you make, and it is hard. It can be kind of it can be draining. It can be expensive. It can be all these things, but it doesn't need to be. And I think every filmmaker really needs to kind of set aside at least 48 hours, a year, to kind of bash out a fun project that that either they didn't know they wanted to make, or just to kind of refresh their skills. Because we spend a lot of time talking about making films, and I personally have spent years talking about making films, and then to find out every so often you can make one in 48 hours, have it out there, and doing festivals whilst you're still talking about this other one, it's really refreshing, and it shows you can do it, and you can make films, and you don't need as much as you did need before. You can shoot it on a phone, you can shoot it with your friends, you can shoot it in your house. House! You heard me! Buy me a toilet fish! All of that keeps happening. If you keep doing that, you'll get better. You'll know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You'll start hearing that little voice of yours, and the films that he wants to make. Just have fun, and just bugger do it.